This video is going to show you how to build sustainability into your business practices. That's what you're here for. That's what we're going to be discussing. We're going to be interviewing Lee Stewart, who is the author of the book called How to Build Sustainability into Your Business Strategy. We're going to be talking about it in the context of ocean protection and why more businesses should include sustainability into their strategy, because it's going to help the environment and there's opportunities for them to increase their business, their scalability, whatever you need to succeed in your business for the long term. Imagine that, thinking long term more than short term. We're going to be discussing that all on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. Business is a part of life. Businesses solve problems for us, whether it be for our convenience, whether it be for our health, whether it be for our overall well-being and just making life easier for us. But it also, a lot of businesses have an impact on the ocean or on the planet. Some people have more of an impact than others, and some people want to help the planet by lessening their impact. And then some people just don't know or don't care about it, or they just don't know where to begin. In comes people like Lee Stewart, who is a business sustainability practitioner, who owns his own consulting firm, has written the book, How to Build Sustainability into Your Business Strategy, for companies to be able to not only benefit the ocean, but also increase their profits and scalability at the same time. Now, you're probably wondering, like, Andrew, why are you having someone about business on your podcast? Because as I go through this and as I continue to create podcasts and interview people and find out more about what's happening with the ocean, the more I come home, look at what products I have, look at all the stuff that I do in my daily practice and realize, wow, a lot of our businesses are set up for waste. A lot of our businesses, it's easier to actually buy a new item and throw out the old one than to actually fix the old one. It's a very different set of practices that we had in, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. We've now gone to a model of like, just throw out what you have now and buy. It's cheaper to buy the new one into that type of model. So products aren't lasting 25, 30 years. They're lasting maybe 5 to 10 if you're lucky. And the waste doesn't really get reused. It doesn't get recycled. It just gets disposed of in a landfill somewhere across the world. It doesn't have to be in your own home country. Like for me, it's not necessarily in Canada. A lot of the times we used to ship it to Malaysia or China. Then they said, no, not anymore, because we're being blamed for all the plastic in the ocean and all the bad waste management that we have. It's because we're taking on products and we're taking on waste from different countries, from larger countries, developing countries, and they're taking the blame for it, and it's not fair. And I agree with them, it's not fair. So we have to come up with business practices that are more sustainable, but the way we've always been thinking about it is it's not like a negative thing. We've always thought of it as a negative thing. Lee Stewart comes in and he says, hey, let's think of it as a positive thing. And in this interview that you're going to see in just a moment, he's going to talk about how he proposes business opportunities to the companies he's working with to be able to put in sustainable practices and think, 20, 30, 50, maybe even 100 years down the road for that longevity in their companies. And I think that's a really important way to think about it. So let's hear it from the man himself, Lee Stewart, talking about sustainability in business practices. If you're a business owner, you're going to want to hear this. If you're not, you're still going to want to hear how to propose it to other business owners. Here's Lee Stewart. Enjoy the interview, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Lee, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about sustainability in business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on the podcast all the way from Sydney, Australia. We're literally across the world at this point if you look at a map, a 2D map. But of course, we're not too far from each other. But it's very nice to have you on the show because we're going to be spinning it a little bit. We're going to be talking about sustainability in business. And people are probably wondering, Andrew, why are we talking about this? Because it's extremely important that if we want to protect the ocean, we have to talk about sustainability in business and how businesses can become more sustainable just in their regular practices. And I think that's an extremely important topic. So I'm just very happy that Lee is here to talk about that because we're going to get into it, but you've essentially written the book on it. And, on the ESG strategy, we're going to talk about what that is, why that's so important. We're also going to be talking about a project that you have, Vavau Ma. Is that how you pronounce it?
Vavau, island of Vavau in Tonga. Yeah.
Tonga. I'm sorry. Okay. Island of Vavau and Tonga. So we're going to be talking about that project. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got so much to talk about. But Lee, before we get into all that, why don't you just let the audience know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me again. And look, Lee Stewart, I've been working in corporate sustainability for well over 20 years now, from startups to head of sustainability for a couple of global multinational, billion-dollar companies, to running consulting teams, and now out on my own running a small consulting practice called ESG Strategy. So I've had the privilege, pain, and frustrations of being on both sides, or even from startups, being inside the tent of large corporations, head of sustainability with tiny teams, grappling for budgets, trying to make change, trying to like move the Titanic from the inside, to being on the outside as a consultant helping multiple companies. So it's been quite diverse, but very exciting, and never a dull moment, to say the least, in this area.
100%. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where 20 years ago, I'm trying to wrap my head around sustainability, and the talk of sustainability just in general, let alone within business, was not a common practice from my experience. Of course, I don't have a lot of corporate experience by any means, but what got you first involved in sustainability or interested in pursuing sustainability? And then how did that lead to what you do? Well, how did that lead to when you first initially started working with companies?
Yeah, I suppose when I look right back, I was so fortunate to grow up in New Zealand, which is 3 hours a bit to the south of Australia, and a lot of Kiwis come to Australia because it's a bigger opportunities and so forth. But I grew up where I was never more than half an hour away from the bush, mountains, or ocean. And part of growing up in the high school, you had at least 1 or 2 weeks a year as outdoor education, where you were just in the bush. And I just loved what they call tramping. I'm sure they call it hiking and other areas. But putting on my pack, going out there with a little tent, and just spending time in nature. And I was very fortunate to also, my dad grew up in the South Island of New Zealand, where you've got great places. His backyard was Queenstown. Cousin runs that family farm, so I'd spend summer holidays there and spending time outdoors in nature. I love sport. So it was just seeing the best of nature. And then when you get into your 20s, late teens, every Kiwi needs to travel, and we do that. And the only place we can afford to travel is probably Asia, because it's cheap, and we go there. And then I saw the worst of what we're doing to the place, and that just hit me like a sledgehammer, going, oh my God, I've read about these things, but when you see it firsthand, when you go to landfill sites and you see things, and you just go, oh, that just really, it tore me insides. And then I sort of looked at how can I had a good career in sort of finance and telecommunications technology, but I was thinking, how can I have still a good career, have a good financial security, but how can I do good? Right. And that's sort of where I started learning about sustainability. I had a couple of years in London where, you get your visa before you turn 30. Kiwis can go to London, and great time, but came back and said, well, what can I do to make a difference? And sort of started learning about sustainability. That was where I had a startup where we created online education around sustainability. And I was very fortunate enough to sell this into a couple of large organizations and banks and so forth, but spend time going to all the conferences and learning about it. There was no courses around at that time, but there was sort of conferences were popping up and so forth, and learned off others for the good 5 or 6 years. And then was fortunate enough to get a role at Fujitsu, where I was within a year I was head of sustainability for a region. And when you talk about it, sustainability not being big 20 years ago, when you work for a large Japanese multinational where they have a sustainability strategy for 100 years into the future. And look back 100 years, and so that was fascinating, and a really good grounding and learning about how big corporates work in sustainability. So
that's very interesting. My wife worked for Fujitsu, one of her first jobs. When we moved to Halifax, she worked for there for a number of years. So that was that's always fun. Big corporation. But it's interesting when you talk about sustainability within the corporate world, because you look at a company like Fujitsu, they own a number of other companies, and they're worldwide. They control a lot, and a lot of times there's a lot of waste that happens, just through their chain, their supply chain, and just the way they do business and stuff. And what was it like were they already in a sustainability practice when you joined them, or was this were a lot of the companies when you worked with them, was it to start a sustainability program, or was it already well on their way?
It was generally well on the way from a global
Yeah.
perspective from Japan, but I was running Australia and New Zealand on
Gotcha.
that stage. So obviously a heavy sales focus, so revenue driven. We've got to win new customers, we've got to win market share, large IT outsourcing, data centers, large energy consumables. So, and at the time, there were climate wars going on, still going on, unfortunately, in
Yeah.
Australia, hugely politicized things.
Right.
And, there was even questions, why have you got a head of sustainability? What do they do? So I really realized quickly for my own security was to tie myself to the sales team. So what does the organization care about? We care about revenue, and every business cares about revenue. So I managed to work with the sales teams to differentiate Fujitsu against our competitors by calling out sustainability as that advantage. So all things being equal, it's a commoditized play. We're sort of up
Yeah.
against the big guys. We're talking IBM, CSC at the
Yeah.
time, and these big guys. But I managed to call out, say we're trying to win a deal at Qantas. So everyone might know that a large airline.
Yep.
Hundreds. These deals are tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. I looked at Qantas' sustainability program and then calculated if they move all their laptops, data centers to us. I did a very high level calculation of the emissions they would save, and then said, if you come to us, we'll help your CIO. Your CIO of Qantas can become, higher in status because you can prove to your board and your executives that you're helping Qantas hit their emission reduction target. That was that sort of thing that I sort of crafted into the bids, large bids
Right.
that weren't a big dollar item. There might be a bit of my consulting and work going in there, but it got into the executive summary in the front page of a large tender document. That was gold. So that was what really learnt me, and as part of my fortunate to have some sales background as well. But altruism and sustainability in large corporations only last so far.
Yeah.
It is one of the first things to get cut, and I'm seeing a lot of colleagues get cut right now
Yeah.
because of the crunch. When you
course.
tie it to revenue coming in, you become more sticky. And I got to the point where they were worried to get rid of me at the time. I knew there was cuts going on. They were saying, "Oh, well, Lee," and I made up a little spreadsheet. I worked on these 40 deals with the sales. It might be only 1, 2, 5% I contributed, but when I add that up and I reported to my CEO annually, there's tens of millions of dollars there. It's not real money, but it's just sort of what I can
Yeah.
finger and say, I was involved in this. So this is the value I bring over and above all the compliance and all the other stuff that I was managing. So that was a
So
real...
would it bring? Sorry, would it bring more money in than they would be paying to become that sustainability or to become that?
Yeah, more than covered my costs and my team and everything else
Yeah.
on that value. And then I created case studies. So I was, and I even got the criticism from my internal comms department, Lee, we're an IT company, not a sustainability company. We can't keep publishing your case studies because no one else was doing it. So, that was a compliment I took at the time. We're not so I said, well, here they all are, use them when you want. But I would go out to customers and bring the head of sustainability, my client, and the chief technology officer or CIO together for the first time. And that's where you create some really good innovations around where can technology help reduce emissions or help
Right.
with bigger sustainability problems. And got some great case studies around that where, innovation, and brought at the heart of what Fujitsu stood for is around innovation technology. How do we help our customers reduce emissions or solve some of these big global challenges? So, yeah.
Especially it sounds like you're attacking, not attacking, but you're focusing on what the biggest bang for their buck would be in terms of reducing their emissions. So technology seems to be the biggest bang. Laptops, computers, any kind of tech that we use. Everybody's tech based now, right? So to be able to reduce that is great. Is that so when you bring in that value, because sometimes I think when corporations put out stuff about their ESGs, a lot of people are just being when we're not familiar with that, or we see a corporation, you kind of look at you and you're like, are they really serious about that? Or is that just sort of playing to our emotions and just be like, oh, okay, well, that'll be, I'll buy this computer over this computer, or I'll buy this product over this product because somebody's doing that, which I tend to do. But sometimes I kind of scoff. I'm like, is this just greenwashing or climate washing? Or is it something that, they take seriously? In your experience, do you see a lot of that happening, the climate washing or the greenwashing? And then how do you make them more serious about it?
Yeah. I run these sort of workshops with my clients all the time, and with comms teams and legal teams, and I've sadly burst many a marketing ideas bubble and ideas when I sort of go, oh, I'm going to take the persona of a Greenpeace activist here. What's my on X? I'm going to just write this short 30 character thing. What's your response to that? You
Yeah.
can. And that's what you got to do. The things I look for is you're not marking your own homework. Someone else is
Right.
saying you're sustainable, and that's a certification you would have to pay for or go through
Yeah.
or do a full, in the terms of say a laptop, a full life cycle assessment analysis of proving
course.
why you're lower carbon, not just in the making but in the use and disposal. What happens, all that sort of stuff. I also look for large multinationals suddenly say they're sustainable when they bring out one product line. That's just, come on, guys. What about all your other things over here? Where's your overarching strategy? Where's your governance model, which people sometimes overlook? Because you might come out with a glossy sustainability report, but I look at the last 2 or 3 years, and then have you actually done anything other than just report on stuff, which is just my biggest frustration about everyone working in sustainability in the corporates is we love to do a good report, but reporting is actually insignificant. What are you actually
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
Is by far more meaningful. Yeah.
Are they executing on what they're saying that they're doing?
Correct.
Which I think a lot of people see that, and there's been such problems with it in the past. And so the trust is gone a lot for a lot of these corporations. They have to almost show what they do before people will believe it, whether it's been a commercial or, an online, ad of some sort, or even through organic kind of things. Like I've talked to a lot of companies that are B Corp companies. You guys have B Corp? Yeah, you have B
They're
Corp.
great.
Yeah, and so you get, the like for people who don't know, it's basically a certification process that companies can get. They look at the ESG model and like how well are you benefiting the environment, your employees, and then just society in general. And you see a lot of companies internally. I met with one like an insurance company, and I had them on the podcast, and they talked about doing like a team building, doing like a salmon restoration project in British Columbia. It's pretty cool kind of thing to do. You don't have to do that. You can do a lot of other team building things, but that was something that was important not only to the owner but also to the employees, and they check up on it and they do it. I think they do it almost annually. But how do you, like, as a consultant and even like working for those corporations in the past, how do you keep them like staying true to what they're saying in the report or what they say in their values?
Yeah. So I have a 3-step process that I take through, and this is pretty much documented in my book, what I talk about. So when I work with someone, especially if they're new to the subject matter, I look at it's a simplest framework. I'm sick of frameworks in sustainability, but I designed one, so sorry. But this is the most simplest one. It's 3 C's. So it's confidence, commitment, and consistency. So first of all, when I'm talking to the executives and so forth, there's confidence. What do you know about your impact? So what do you know where your biggest, say, carbon emissions come from, or what's your biggest social impact? Have you actually gone out and seen for yourself, or you're relying on a report to come on your desk?
Right.
Especially if you're a large emitter, I would take the board where I was working large. Let's go see this as a field trip, because I'm going to talk about it. You go see it, and you talk to the people, whether it's the farmer, the someone on the manufacturing floor. Listen to them firsthand, because I would probably guarantee they've got ideas how to reduce that, but they haven't been heard because it gets filtered up the chain. So what are the big global macro issues mean to your business and a relative to your business? So that's the confidence piece. And I'm talking even modern slavery, supply chain, climate change, waste, all these other things. But how do they relate to your business and your function? What's your impact on that? So that can be relatively simple for your business if you're services, but if you're a big manufacturer, or big supply chain, that can be quite a lot to unpack, especially if you're dealing with things like I've had to deal with things like palm oil and other things like that are
some serious issues.
Quite serious. Yeah. Then I look at the consistency. The second C is commitments. That is, what do you stand for? So it's a given. You're going to have a target, or you're going to have targets about something. You're going to have a climate target. You're going to have something around modern slavery. What do you must have? What do you stand for? And then the final piece that I really think a lot of companies let themselves down is the consistency. And that's what I look for, especially if there's established sustainability credentials. And to all your listeners out there, if you're trying to evaluate a company, have a look at how they govern sustainability. Is there something around the governance of, is there a subcommittee of the board? Does the board see this? Do the executives have remuneration tied to elements of success of sustainability? this is where I see a lot of things fall over because I've been that sole person. Oh, Lee's in the room. Lee's got all the targets. Lee's got diversity, inclusion, modern slavery, the waste, and guess what? There's PFAS and all these other things coming, but Lee's got it in his team. That's just never going to last, and that's where most of me and my colleagues we've burnt out. You've got to have the right structure, and it'll be the executives are responsible for certain elements of the strategy, and they're reporting quarterly, annually to the board about this certain areas. So, for instance, head of operations would probably have emissions and waste. Your HR people function might obviously have the people, health and safety, those elements, and that they're responsible for elements of the overarching sustainability strategy, and that's where it lasts beyond just one person, one team. So that's what I look for. Yeah,
it's really interesting. Have you had a lot of pushback in your career where people are just like, it's like, oh, Lee, you're such a pain in the butt. You're always talking about sustainability and it's getting in the way of what we really want to do here is make money or change the world, however they're doing that. So, how do you react to that?
Yeah, pretty much every day, unfortunately. and it's hard because of my background, my title. I come into everyone, as soon as I walk into a boardroom, everyone knows, oh God, here comes that tree hugger, but he's maybe dressed in a collared shirt.
Right.
You're going to tell us we're all bad and so forth. What I do, and probably linking back to my earlier point, having it customer centric. You may not care, and I actually given up. I don't care what your political views are. What do you think about things like climate change? It's irrelevant in the conversation. Right. This is where the market's moving. This is where your competitors might be moving. This is what your customers are wanting.
Interesting.
And this is what governments around the world are now demanding for you to report on, not just your financials, but your non-financials. So here in Australia and New Zealand, you've got coming in climate-related disclosures, risks and opportunities. You have to mandatory report with the same rigor as your financials at the same time you do your financials, 3 months after your end of your financial year. That will get audited and reported on. So it doesn't really matter. And if you're not captured in, say, the large company, you will be over a matter of time, because I'm working with these large companies asking surveys of all their suppliers. And even that's gone down to the mum and dad garden shed supplier.
Of course. Just
asking them, what's your waste? What's your carbon emissions? Do you have any modern slavery in your supply chain? It filters down. So that's sort of what I try and get to relatively quickly. And, I've been in front of boards where there's been a dozen, far too many, and I know that there might be 6 that just will never, doesn't matter what I say, will never probably change. I'll focus on the guys that can change, and they'll come along over time. So, yeah.
Well, especially how long did it take? You said that legislation is coming through where they have to report on these profiting kind of values. Was that a big push or a big, quote unquote political fight to get that legislation pushed through or even discussed in a political setting?
Oh, it's been about a decade in the making, sort of thing. But there's a few acronyms which I could throw at you. But there's started off with the Task Force for Climate Change Financial Related Disclosures, TCFD. But the international standards boards and accounting standards boards have taken that, and countries are now adopting that. The EU is adopting it. New Zealand did it 3 years ago. I've helped a couple of companies go through that. Australia's now got it, and they'll be reporting on it next year. Singapore is looking at certain elements around, even state of California are looking at certain things. The US have obviously watered all that down, but if you're going to operate in a global context, and especially when I was working for Fonterra New Zealand, one of the large, and it's the largest exporter of New Zealand, I was saying people will take your product anywhere around the world, but if you want to have a premiumization of your product, you want to charge the highest dollar rate, these intangibles that come around your product are now important, because they are now reporting on their own carbon emissions, climate risks, and so forth. And if you're part of their supply chain, if you want to be part of the global market, it's going to become, what I would call table stakes.
Right.
And then the other thing too, I've helped one company get investment because they had a sustainability-linked loan. So in order to attract the lower cost of capital, they had to do some certain things, set targets, have a sustainability strategy, governance model, and so forth. So it's becoming almost a future insurance policy to get access to capital as well in some areas.
Interesting. Yeah, this is such an interesting subject, because it's so nuanced within the corporate world,
Yep.
and when you look at it, it's like companies should be making it's going to be such an important aspect, especially when, as you mentioned before, it's kind of like a top down. So you get government regulation that forces the corporations to do it. The corporation forces their suppliers. They have to force their suppliers, and those suppliers go down even further to like the local level. And so everybody has to kind of report up to these larger reports, and then they get audited on it. And then there's changes to it. And I think the European Union did this as well. I had an interview.
That's got it coming in. Yep.
They've got it coming in too. I don't know if the U.S. will have it in the next 4 years, but I know Canada has something going on as well. I don't know if there's specific targets or specific legislation coming through, but I know they've done a lot on the environmental front. We have some other things to worry about these days, but hopefully that's being done in the background so that can get pushed through. But how important is it for government to enact these regulations? Because I feel like if they're not there, a lot of the corporations, like, if we don't have to do it, we won't do it.
Yes, exactly. And critical, really, in some respects. In some respects. But the best way that I've seen governments do it is set the baseline, but trying to get out of the way early, let innovation take place. And I've seen that happen here in Australia, where energy efficiency ratings and building standards has been quite good. They verify it and certify it, but now you've got property portfolios saying we're going to get to 5-star within 10 years and try to beat each other. So the competitive nature has driven the market really well.
Nice.
So that's really what it's been good. So hopefully, it's early stages, but we'd like to see some comparisons and say, well, company X did not do a very good climate-related disclosures. They did not look at this in their supply chain, or did not factor in these things, whereas company B is more investor-ready. Investors know what's going to happen. There's some sort of competitive advantage to doing it well. And I'm having a lot of these conversations right now because Australian companies are some of them dragging, kicking and screaming, going, oh, there's more and more of this green tape sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I step back and I say, look, the government didn't do this to burden you with bureaucracy. It did it to help create better, resilient businesses and long-term prosperity, really.
Yeah.
This is what it's about. And it's forcing you to look not 2-3 years, but 10, 20 years in advance, and have some serious conversations about the viability of your business. But there are also opportunities as well, because you might get first market mover, you might come up with a new product at zero emissions. You've got all these other things that I unpack when I work with companies. So I really focus on the opportunity side. You might be first to market with this new product. Your competitors are way behind. Everyone's moving anyway. So there's opportunity there.
That's an important point to drill home, because that's something that businesses will always react to. Oh, it might give me an advantage in the marketplace. Oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not that we have to do it because the government just making you do it. They're not going to do anything with it. It's actually forcing you to really look at your business long term and say, hey, this is where things are going. I mean, I'm sure, was it 20 years ago, people were talking about electric cars, and people were like, that's ridiculous. That's not happening. And you had a few leaders that were coming through, and some government leaders too, that were coming through and were able to really make that scale rapid to give out cars like that, like Chinese car EVs are going off the market like crazy. And so it's an interesting aspect to do it, like, from a selling feature. Cause I think, from a science and conservation standpoint, I'm always at well, this is our planet. Like, we have to take care of our planet. And then people are like, well, I don't care about the planet right now. I just care about my business, and I care about, a lot of them we just get that I care about making money, and that's all I care about. But when you forced to oh, okay, let's look at it differently. You can forecast out 10, 20 years, a lot more work, but it'll be better for your resiliency. That could be a really big selling feature. I think scientists and conservationists need to approach it that way more, right? And I think it's nice for you to have that sales background, work in that corporate world, to just be this is how we approach it. You got to speak their language. I think is one of the important parts. What do you do for corporate or for companies that you work with? Did you just work with corporations, or do you work with smaller to mid-sized companies as well?
Yeah, the ideal company I like to work for is the mid-size that doesn't have a sustainability team, and they've probably got these regulatory pressures or customer pressures, probably even more.
Right.
So that's what I really like to work. But I do work with the larger guys as well. So,
Of course.
yeah.
So when you work with those mid-sized companies,
Yeah.
a lot of times you said a lot of times they may not have a sustainability strategy. Do you approach them? They approach you? Is this because of new regulations, or how is that? How does that work? That relationship work?
It's a bit of both. I'm fortunate enough to have a decent name around Australia and New Zealand, so I do get some people approach. Or when I'm working with a larger company, when I go across their supply chain, it's quite nice to say, "Oh, you better come talk to us about these questions that they're asking." I said, "Yeah, we can help you with that." So it's really nice to do that organically. The book has been great too, as a sort of a lead magnet for me. Getting out there, speaking public events, and also running workshops around the book. A 90-minute workshop I did just a couple weeks ago for 70 non-for-profits, using the book as a framework to how to get your shell of your sustainability strategy done. So it works really well. And ideally I go in there for a period of 3 to 6 months, set up the governance, the structures, targets, work with the board and the executive. And then for 3 clients, I've been very fortunate enough to help hire and train their sustainability manager. So sometimes that comes internally, which is ideal because they know the business. They're looking for a career change. They might have been in the business for 10 years. They've got some internal political capital that they want to use, and they're looking for new meaning and stuff. That's worked out really well, and a couple of the hires. And sometimes I help recruit, but I shadow them on their first board meetings and executive, and then pull back over time. And then I keep looking at the horizon. What's the next 2 or 3 years ahead, and help them out with other things. So that's ideally where I try and build the capability as I go.
Very cool. Now you have your own consulting company, as you mentioned, consulting firms you mentioned. What's your sustainability values like? What's your sustainability plan for your company?
Yeah. No, look, it's very small. There's only a handful of people. So we, one of my colleagues had to go to Melbourne. She actually took the train. It was a 12-hour train instead of an hour flight. She was very keen on that.
Nice sacrifice.
So we're trying to do that, but I'm not sure if you do it every time. But we're looking at different ways we can do that. But really what our goal is, and my personal goal, is to create 1,000 sustainable leaders in the next 3 years that are doing greater things than us. That's through the book and stuff like that. So that's where we think we can have the biggest impact. I can only work with so many companies, but if I can help, and I just do that every now and then. I get a free, I have a chat to someone in sustainability. They're looking for a career help and stuff like that. Happy to help the grads in their programs as well. So I do a lot of that. So that's where we think we can have the biggest impact, is creating future leaders.
I love that. And of course you're doing it almost within your mission or the work you do with getting those. You're obviously not with those companies all the time. You're consulting, so you want to set them up so that they can be leaders on their own, which I think that's really valuable in what you bring when you can do it in your regular day job and you can kind of give that to people. So that's something that's really interesting. Now you have a project that's very special to you. We mentioned at the beginning of the episode, is called Vavau Tonga. And now that is an island off of Tonga. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of this project?
Yeah, so really came about 6 years ago. I'm a climate reality presenter and mentor, and then Al Gore came to Brisbane to do some training, and he introduced me to a Tongan leader, climate change leader, Willie Losi. And when he found out I was moved to New Zealand, so it said, come over and help Tonga with their circular economy strategy or waste. And, I've spent, sadly, as much as I love working in the Pacific, just to let all your listeners know, it's not just sitting at the beach having pina coladas. Apparently, I go to the worst places. I go to the landfill. It's probably the first place I go to and look and just see what's going on there. And I do get to the beach eventually. But what I did was looking at that. It's just stark. There's, especially if some of your listeners are very well developed, we take recycling for granted.
Yes.
There's nothing here. There is nothing. Everything goes to the landfill, and if anything, they might have a one little digger, but the main tool is a rake and a lighter. So it sort of hit me, and then the opportunity came up to go to this special island of Vavau. Now, this is one or two places where you're allowed to swim with humpback whales, and this is where they come. Right now, they come there to give birth every year, and you are looking at the most pristine water. I was just there 2 months ago, just snorkeling. Didn't get a chance to go diving, but you can see the bottom 200 meters, and it's the most pristine water, and it is so sheltered. So it's the perfect place for humpback whales to give birth, and it's one of the few places you can actually swim with them. So I just missed the season; they're just there now. But then I spent some time. This is a small island, a few thousand population, but it triples in size around whale season, of course.
Of course, yeah.
There is no, and going to landfill, they've run out of space. They want to create a new landfill site, and I'm working with the governor there to try and stop that and saying we need to, because once you go to a new landfill site, that land is gone pretty much. You can't do much. So
No.
we're trying to work on a program to try get some funding from local Australian, New Zealand governments, and so if we've got a proposal there where we're going to take, try and make that the circular island, starting with waste streams. And we're starting with plastic. So the world's first circular island, and circular kingdom is the idea around Tonga, but we've got some technology from the University of Wollongong which can shred plastic and 3D print it in a small shipping container. So the idea is to create a social enterprise run by women where, and the schools will be collect the plastic, it's shredded and it's made by artists or designed or injection mold or 3D printed into, whale tokens that are given to, that tourists pay for as part of the levy. They come and swim with the whales. And we're starting with that waste stream, but we're looking at how we can do. We want to actually crush all the glass, because I went to a couple of the bars and there's all the glass just goes to landfill. So we want to crush the glass, make it into concrete blocks so we can make an artificial reef in a certain location. These sort of headline projects that I know are just nibbling around the edges of what needs to happen, but will get global attention to actually start doing other things. So we're looking at, how do we get rid of all the cars, abandoned cars and all this other stuff. How do we actually make Vavau pristine? And then the NGO that we're set up is called Vavau Ma'a, and Ma'a in Tonga means sort of pristine, looking after nature and so forth. So very fortunate to have the governor's endorsement. We've got a local leader involved, and then we're just at the stage of just getting funding to set up. We've got the land sort of area in the main area of town. We're going to get the school kids all engaged. So hopefully by the end of the year, we've got some sort of small project starting, and we're looking to grow that. And ideally, if this becomes a template for the islands, we'd like to do it around every Pacific island. So, yeah.
I was just thinking, you must have so many ideas in your head of how to reduce waste, how to avoid recycling and reuse particular items. It doesn't matter whether it's on a small island or in a big country. You've seen all of these projects. And it always makes me wonder why companies aren't, or even governments and islands and stuff like that, aren't looking for these types of projects more often. What is the barrier there for these? Like, until they have to do the sustainability, or until, like, for Vavau, where it was either do this or open up a second landfill site. What are the barriers for people to start looking inward and being like, how do we really manage how we're living right now?
One of my bugbears is that large corporations get stuck in the boardroom. They don't go, and I deliberately spent hours at this landfill. I've got to get letters out to I photographed all the big brands. And the CEO is going to get a letter from when I get the time, or work with the governor, from the governor of Vavau, saying this is happening. And I've been to them. They say, oh, we go through a distributor and it's not us. But I said, well, hey, your brand's here. It doesn't matter.
Your name on it.
Part of this? Your name's on here. It's coming here, and there's nothing we can do with it except put it here. And this is meters away from the most pristine waters in the world, and we all love humpback whales. So get out of your boardroom and see. If you make something that is not fully circular, follow that waste stream. And I've done it with e-waste, where I've gone to Singapore, landfills in India as well. You follow the waste stream and you'll see, and just see. Go out and see for yourself. And that was one of the things I learned very much when I worked for Fujitsu. The Kaizen principle was, they had a Kaizen program, but Kaizen was always go and see for yourself. Don't rely on that report. If you create waste in your business, go to the landfill, follow your rubbish bin, follow your recycler. And I go visit all the recyclers. I go visit landfill. I work with hotel chains where I made it a annual job for each hotel manager to go to local landfill and report back on what you see to the group. So that was my biggest thing. Go and see for yourself. Don't rely on the reports coming from your teams and stuff. You're an executive. You're making these decisions.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I can say.
Now, when you contact the companies like that, it's it can come off as like a fear tactic. It was like, hey, your brand's here, it's all like people are going to recognize it as the thing that's always wasted. Like we get that here too. Like our government will be like, we see a lot of Tim Horton cups. Tim Hortons is like the big coffee shop, named after a hockey player. Of course, we're Canada, so we have hockey. You probably have some in Australia because they're worldwide now, and New Zealand. But that was a big thing, and it seems a lot of plastic strategies, like reduction strategies, have some sort of tracking strategy of the products by the companies at some point in time, whether it's already in or it's coming down the line. That's a big thing, for the corporations and companies who make the product, however they make it, whether it's through a supplier or not, has to track the end of life of where that's going to be, like where it's going to end up. And so is it more towards like, if you don't want to be on this list, like if it's going into the landfill, it's not going to recycling like you say it's going, which we know that doesn't always happen, or it's in, like for Canada, like North America, we send it to islands like Vavau or Malaysia, or we used to, and we just thought, oh, it's recycled, we don't have to worry about it. So the point of tracking it is that the idea is to say, hey, by the way, like your Tim Hortons cup ended up halfway across the world on this island. Why are we seeing it here? Nobody buys Tim Hortons on an island in the middle of the Pacific. Is that the goal, is to be like, be responsible for your own trash?
Absolutely. And it's more also given the opportunity to be part of the solution as well. So we're not just going to name and shame you. We're going to say, hey, this is what's happening. And come and swim with the whales is the invitation to these CEOs and these brands. Come and see for yourself. Come and swim with the whales. And then come and help us with this project. That's the open invitation, and that's the Vavau Ma'a principle. That's the Tongan hospitality principle that we can bring. And when you go to these places and see for yourself, and you'll see the impact of sea level rise, climate change. You see how resilient the locals need to be and what's facing them. I mean, Tonga is described as the second most impacted country on climate change in the world, with sea level rise and all these other things. Come and be part of that solution. And I know in these large corporations, they're looking for these good stories too, right? So we can give you that, and we can give you that experience, and we can give you, a new lens on how you can see, your waste.
This is amazing. I completely agree. It's like, and it's almost like it's reconnecting with the ocean, going out and seeing what's happening. And if you're going out with these whales, and once you see them, if you're swimming with them, if you're in a boat with, and you're looking at them, you're already like your emotional heartstrings are being tugged, because there's nobody that can just see a whale and just be like, that's a whale, whoop-de-doo. It's holy cow, that's a whale. And then all of a sudden you start looking around, you start saying, hey, like this is something that we need to make sure that we protect these things, especially if our company is being held responsible, or our products are ending up here somehow. That's a powerful message. That is a powerful message, and I love that message. If you were, just to sum it up, I know what you do is complicated. What you do is very, convoluted for a lot of ways. It's a lot of problem solving. For companies who are listening to this, or individuals who own companies who are watching this and listening to this episode, what's the first recommendation you would say to them if they do not have a sustainability strategy in there? Like, what's the first thing before they call you and work with you? What's the first thing that they need to start to look at or even consider? Yeah,
so there's a simple thing you could do, which is called it's not simple, it can be complicated, but you can do a very simple materiality assessment. You can go and ask your suppliers, ask your staff, what do you think are our biggest sustainable impacts? And break it down at ESG or whatever. What's our biggest environmental impacts of our operations? Is it, do we have 20 cars? Do we fly everywhere? Do we have waste? What's our social impact? Do we work in communities? What's our employment policies, health and safety? Just write them down. Then I ask you to think about something which is uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I do hit them up front in the book, and I hit it up front, probably the first conversation I have with the board, and I often greeted with silence, but I ask you to think about, if your business didn't exist, or your NGO or function did not exist, would the planet really miss you? Would society and environment really miss you? Would you be missed? And I get a lot, especially manufacturers think, oh, we'll get replaced by someone else overseas and stuff like that, but they won't care as much. Well, why do you care more? What's that? And in that question, if you just really think about it, and really want you guys to write this down if you're listening to it, if my business didn't exist, would the environment or society be better or worse off? And ask that across people. And in that is you find your opportunities, you find your weakness, you find things you can work on, and delve a bit deeper. Ask the second, third tier questions to that as well. And I'm sure most cases you'll find something that really sticks out and you go, yeah, that's our superpower, or that's something we don't do. Or, oh, geez, we better fix that thing,
True,
like that.
true. Yeah. Or they might even, you might even highlight something that you do, but you didn't realize benefited the community or society in some kind of way.
And you don't talk about it. And that's a lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of companies work, well, we don't do much in this area. And well, yeah, actually, you actually do quite a lot.
Yeah, you don't think it, but from the outside perspective, you do. Yeah. Oh, that's really important. Thank you so much. Lee, this has been so great to have you on. So for the book, if people want to go get your book, you can get it at any kind of bookstore that you would like. So wherever you are in the world, it's in those books. It's a top seller. Can you just talk a little bit about the book and how they can find it?
It's just so it's How to Build Sustainability of Business Strategy. It's on Amazon. Very easy. Obviously, you can get it on an ebook version as well. I wrote it. I agonize over it, but I wrote it to be read in a weekend. You can ask questions of your business Monday, Tuesday, and by Friday you're actually doing something. It's not. I tried to get all that tree hugging jargon out of there. It's a business book, and it's for someone. If you're looking at business, you're looking for a competitive advantage. There's something in there for you. It's not just about sustainability. I think there's some good ideas. There's templates. There's things that you can do and have conversations with your team. I've tried to encompass 20 years of pain and frustration, so you don't have to live that. And in this book, it gives you a good head start.
Yeah, I love it. Lee, thank you so much. We'll put the links to get a hold of the book. Also get in touch with you if anybody has any questions. We'd love to have you back on to talk more about sustainability in business later on as you continue to help people out and help businesses out and help the planet and the ocean. We appreciate the work that you and your colleagues do. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great, Andrew. And we would love to extend that invitation to come swim with the whales in Tonga with me sometime, mate. Keep that on your list.
I would love that.
That would be a good. Let's do a podcast in Tonga together about that. All right?
Hey, we could do a podcast on the island. There's no stopping us doing that. Awesome. Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Lee. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It's so great to have you on and be able to talk about sustainability and business practices. This is something that's really important in all of what we talk about. I know sometimes, like for a podcast like this, where we talk about the ocean and we talk sometimes about cool things animals do or education or conservation, it's the nuts and bolts of conservation. It's the non-sexy part of conservation. To me and to a lot of us who look at it, I just want to hear about the ocean. No. This is conservation. Conservation happens at home. We are the ones who are affecting the world, whether it be the blue planet or the planet itself. We are affecting this world. We need to stop with our waste. We need to come up with better business practices. And Lee showed us just, looking at Vavau, the island in Tonga that we discussed, and looking at how they're taking waste and they're making it into 3D printing materials to come up with these medallions that tourists can buy as part of their tax to go on this island. You got to think about it. We are tourists. We go on this island, we go in and we marvel at the wonder of this island. A lot of us are like, can I live here? Is this a place that I can hang out or live here? Because this would be really cool to live on an island. But there are a lot of problems that come up for that island when you have a huge tourist presence. And this happens in a lot of islands across the world, whether you're in the Caribbean or the South Pacific or elsewhere. And the people who live there have to deal with the problems. And so being able to have to pay a specific tax to help them deal with these problems that we cause as tourists, to say, hey, you know what? We really loved your island. You really loved what it could do and the opportunities that you provided us on our short stay. Here's something to give back. Here's something to help us. Hopefully we can offset it, whatever our impact is. Not that we're trying to have an impact, but we do eventually have an impact. And these small island communities need the help to be able to overcome that. And, just coming up with these types of practices with Lee, working with in congruence with them and working off of their knowledge and what they need and listening to them and saying, hey, there's some opportunities here is a really important feat. It's a really important strategy moving forward for all of us, whether we live on an island or we live on a huge land, it doesn't matter. We can come up with ways to be better. We can always come up with ways to innovate. We can always come up with ways with reducing our waste. And that is the challenge I give all of us. whether we're individuals, business owners, we work for a company, we work for government, work for a nonprofit organization. It doesn't matter. We all need to pitch in and figure out and use our minds, use our creativity to say, hey, we can do some really great things. Lee gave us some examples, which I'm really proud of, that he was able to do, to share it with you. And I would love to hear your examples of what you've done as an individual or as part of a business to be able to reduce the waste of where you work or what you do. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this. You can hit me up on the website. Go to speakupforblue.com/contact. Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. And of course, you can hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. Just DM me. I'd be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. I want to thank you for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'd like to thank Lee as well. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.